All right, so we are now recording. I am going to share my screen. Today's talk slideshow is on it's number 73. All right, today, PDA audience, we are going to talk about compassionate drug use. And this is Nick Kapp, your SFPD ASC academic advisor, and our PDA member audience, including Julio Catalan, who is the president of the student group. What we intend to do is inform and educate a new generation of pharma manufacturers through discussion of helpful links, stories, and interviews. Help us help you. In the coming weeks, we'll be trying out various ways to inform our listeners to what it takes to work in the biopharma manufacturing sphere. You can contact me at cap@smccd.edu. Again, this is the SFBA PDA student chapter, SFPD-ASC. We are on multiple platforms. You can go ahead and take a look at us. So what I want to talk to today about is basically compassionate use. These are kind of different things. Compassionate drug use means making a new unapproved drug available to treat seriously ill patients when no other treatments are available. The drugs are being tested, but they've not yet been approved by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, and these are called investigational new drugs. And these drugs are normally only available to people who are taking part in clinical trials. Being able to use one of these drugs who are not in a clinical trial is most commonly referred to as compassionate drug use. And so again, what we've looked at before is people thought, something like people with COVID taking ivermectin when they're really sick as being part of this compassionate drug use, but that is not the case. Who might benefit from compassionate drug use? Basically, patients with serious or life-threatening conditions who cannot get treatment with an unapproved drug through a clinical trial. These are the ones that may benefit from that. And typically these would be people with cancer, drugs, or other areas. People who aren't in clinical trials might be able to get access to an unapproved drug from a company that makes it in one of two ways: through the expanded access programs, or what we call EAPs, or through the right to try that's been in the news a lot lately. And so again, not all drugs are available for compassionate use. And the drug companies aren't required to supply their drugs through compassionate use. Each drug company has different policies and procedures, but laws require all drug companies to publicly post contact information for compassionate use. And so this is going to be something that's on their website that says what their policy is. Again, there may be very limited amounts of drug available for compassionate use. And so companies make, because it isn't very expensive to make these drugs, a lot of times companies will make very small amounts of this drugs in order to use in the clinical trials. And sometimes that's all the amount that we have for this. And so again, they're usually going to save their drug for the clinical trials before they make it available, even with compassionate use. The expanded access programs, these are for patients who meet the conditions. They have a serious life-threatening condition. That means basically they're going to die if they don't get the drug or don't get treatment with the drug. They're not currently available for a clinical trial. They have no other comparable treatment options, and they are likely to have a benefit that outweighs the risks that are involved. That is, basically, it saves their lives. For the Right to Try Act, it's important to understand that the right to try does not actually give patients the right to try any unapproved drug they wish to try, but instead it gives them the right to request access to an unapproved drug from a company that makes it without having to go through the FDA. And so, again, the American Cancer Society wrote out a nice little table that shows you the difference between the EAPs and the right to try, and the specific criteria for patients to get the drugs. And so on both of these, the patient must have a life-threatening condition, the drug must be being tested in clinical trials, and the patient isn't eligible for the clinical trials of this drug. Again, does the FDA need to approve this? For the EAP, yes. For the right to try, no. A request for the drug access might be made by a licensed doctor. And so basically, you need to work with a doctor, and your doctor is going to be that kind of gateway person who will go through it. And so again, if your doctor doesn't believe in it and doesn't want to prescribe it, then you're not necessarily going to have it to happen. You as a patient can't tell your doctor, hey, I want these drugs. And so again, if you want to use compassionate drug use, here are some things that your doctor should ask you, and you should discuss with your doctors. Are there any approved treatments that I haven't tried? And so again, compassionate use is going to be the use of last ditch effort. Is there any evidence to support that the drug may treat your type of cancer or your particular ailment? What makes you think that the drug would help that individuals? What makes you think this drug is likely to work better than any approved drug? What are the known risks and benefits for the treatment of the drug? Will the drug companies give you the drug for free? And again, how is it paid for? Again, not all these drugs are paid for by the companies. Some companies do provide them for free, but a lot of companies want to make at least their money in manufacturing back. And then also, most insurance companies won't pay for any of these drugs. And also, if you go to a clinic, the clinic has to, again, when they inject you, the person who's injecting you needs to get paid. They need to buy the needles and kind of everything else like that. So there's a cost with that is not covered a lot of times by it. Again, we have access to get enough of the drug in order to do the treatment. And then how long do you think it will take to get access to the drugs? Are you not going to be around for that for that particular drug? And so what we see is, again, Paul Alou, who's the head of Global Governance Office at Novartis, says that compassionate use and expanded access programs, there's 3 steps to implement their implementation for benefits for all. But basically at Novartis alone, they basically receive about 10,000 requests every year for compassionate use, and they have an approval rate of roughly about 95%, and this is usually within about 4 days or so. Again, Paul talks about how they've garnered significant experience and understanding over time, which they've used to push the boundaries and pave the path forward and improve their particular programs. And so again, expanded use, compassionate use, when done correctly, again, you ask those questions. Can something else be used to treat? But also when you get data from this, can help actually supplement what's going on in the clinical trials. And so if you have the product, compassionate use can supplement the clinical trials. It's not just anyone can use anything at any time. You have to go through a physician, and you have to have reason for this. And so in leaving, I always leave this slide, is this politics or is this science? In that compassionate use is a way for people not enrolled in clinical trials to be able to use a drug. Doctors can prescribe a drug for off-label use. That'd be things like the ivermectin. So again, these compassionate use laws are for drugs that basically haven't been approved by the FDA yet. And it is slightly different than kind of what most people thinks. Thanks a lot for tuning in and learning a little bit about compassionate use. And we are at #Kapp's blog at SFPDASC. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So thanks a lot. Any questions, Julio?
Oh yeah, very good talk, Dr. Kapp. So this compassionate use drug is typically given for individuals with like life-threatening conditions.
Yeah. So again, if you're doing it, you can't get compassionate use to grow hair on your head or something like that to use a drug in order to do that. And again, when you're looking at it, you really need to make the case, you and your physician need to make the case that the benefits would outweigh the risks that you could possibly have.
Oh, interesting. Like when this has this like compassionate use drug use the trend has increased.
Oh yeah, it definitely has increased, and part of that is due to again a number of laws that have come out the right the right to try laws that have come out, and there's a number of states that have done that, Michigan and Texas specifically, but also the federal government has done that. But again, a lot of times some of these drugs are very hard to manufacture, and if the company can manufacture them, if they have extra drugs, then you make a you have a right to ask for that drug, and you and your physician have a right to try that drug. But there are going to be some expenses, not only expenses from getting the drug, but if you take this in a clinic setting, you should be monitored. They can't just take you the drug and give you the drug and say, go off on it. And again, like all these things, you want to get the results from that. And even though it isn't a clinical trial, those results may be pertinent to other people who are taking the drug.
I see.
Okay, I'm going to turn off the recording.